Have you ever seen one of those massive container ships just piled high with cargo and thought to yourself, how in the world is that thing not tipping over? I mean, it just seems to defy logic, right? Well, today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the invisible science that keeps these absolute giants afloat and upright. Okay, let's get into it. So it really all boils down to this question. A ship can lean over, but not all leaning is the same. You see, when it's pushed by something on the outside, like wind or a wave, that's called heeling. It's temporary, it's normal. But if it's leaning because of something inside the ship, like maybe the cargo shifted, that's called a list, and that is a whole lot more serious. So what's the magic force that decides whether a ship bounces back or just keeps on going? To really get this, we've got to start with the two fundamental forces that are always in a constant tug of war on any ship. It's a nonstop, high-stakes balancing act. Okay, first up, you've got gravity. I mean, obviously, every single thing on that ship, the steel, the engines, the cargo, the crew, it all has weight. Now, imagine you could take all of that combined weight and concentrate it at one single perfect balance point. That is the center of gravity, and we'll just call it G. It's kind of like the spot where you could theoretically balance the whole ship on the tip of a giant finger. And pushing back against all that weight from below is the force of buoyancy. The water is pushing up, and it's pushing with a force that's exactly equal to the weight of the water the ship is displacing. And just like gravity, this upward force acts on a single point, the center of buoyancy, or B. Basically, it's the dead center of the part of the ship that's underwater. So if the world were a perfectly calm bathtub, this is where the story would end. When the ship is sitting perfectly upright, its center of gravity, G, is directly above its center of buoyancy, B. The down force and the up force are in a perfect line. They're in equilibrium. Simple, right? But the ocean is, well, it's not a calm bathtub. So if G and B are all we have, what happens when a wave rocks the boat and things start to tilt? Well, this is where the story gets really interesting. It turns out there's a third, kind of secret player in this whole game. And this is the real secret sauce. It's not just about gravity pushing down and water pushing up. The real key to understanding why a ship rights itself is this third invisible point that only really shows its importance when the ship starts to lean. And here it is. It's called the metacenter, or M for short. Now, stay with me here. When a ship tilts, the underwater shape changes, right? So the center of buoyancy, B, actually shifts over. The metacenter, M, is the spot where the new upward line of force from that shifted B crosses the ship's original center line. For now, just think of M as the critical pivot point for the ship's stability. And this is the absolute key takeaway right here. The entire game of ship stability, literally all of it, comes down to the relationship between the center of gravity, G, and this new pivot point, the metacenter, M. That little vertical gap between them, it's called the metacentric height, or GM. And honestly, that one number, it's everything. And depending on where G is relative to M, you get three totally different situations. The ship can be stable, it can be unstable, or it can be in this really precarious state called neutral. Let's take a look at what each one actually means. All right, now this is what you want to see. This is a stable ship. The key here is that the center of gravity, G, is below the metacenter, M. So when the ship tilts, you have gravity pulling down on G and buoyancy pushing up towards M. And together they create this powerful lever. It's called a righting moment, and it literally forces the ship to rotate back upright. It's the ship saving itself. But what if the ship gets top-heavy? What if G climbs up above M? Oh, this is bad, really bad. Now when the ship takes a little tilt, that same lever action works against you. Gravity pulling down on that high G creates what's called a capsizing moment, and it actively pushes the ship to tilt over even more. This is an incredibly dangerous situation. And then you've got this weird middle ground, neutral stability. This is what happens when G and M end up in the exact same spot, so the metacentric height is 0. Now, if the ship gets pushed over, nothing happens. There's no force trying to right it, and there's no force trying to capsize it. It just sits there, stuck at that angle. Now, you'd probably think an unstable ship, where G is above M, would just, keel over, and that's it. But sometimes, something even stranger and in some ways way more dangerous happens. The ship actually finds a new place to balance. Okay, let's walk through this because it's a little wild. In picture 1, the ship's unstable. A little push in picture 2 creates that dangerous capsizing moment we talked about. But watch what happens. As the ship heels way over, its underwater shape changes so much that the center of buoyancy, B, shifts way out to the side. Eventually, like you see in picture 3, B can move so far that it's directly under the high center of gravity again. At that moment, the forces align, the capsizing stops, and the ship just hangs there. This is the angle of lull. So now, the ship thinks this tilted position is its new upright. It's terrifying. And I can't stress this enough. This is a code red, all hands on deck emergency for a ship's crew. A vessel sitting at an angle of lull has basically no stability left in the bank. The next decent-sized wave or a strong gust of wind could easily be enough to push it past that fragile balancing point and send it all the way over. So, knowing all this, how do people actually design and operate these ships? Well, it's not just about being stable. It's about having the right kind of stability. And this brings us to the very practical ideas of stiff and tender ships. And look, this isn't just abstract theory. Check out these real-world numbers for metacentric height, that GM value. You can see how different types of ships are designed for different jobs. See how a giant supertanker needs a huge GM for maximum safety, while a smaller general cargo ship can get by with a lot less. It's all about designing for the mission. So here's the big trade-off. A ship with a really large GM is called stiff. It's super stable. It has a huge righting moment, so it snaps back upright incredibly fast, often so violently it can be uncomfortable or even dangerous for the crew and cargo. The opposite is a tender ship with a small GM. It has a much more gentle, slow, comfortable roll. But if that GM gets too small, you start flirting with disaster. The sweet spot is always somewhere in the middle. And this image just nails it perfectly. Look on the left, you've got a big gap between G and M. That's a stiff ship with a powerful, fast-acting righting lever. Then on the right, you see a tiny gap. That's your tender ship with a much gentler, slower correction. It really is a constant balancing act between safety and comfort. So, what do you do if your ship is too tender or, even worse, unstable? You have to act, and you have to act fast. It's all about one thing. Get that center of gravity, G, as low as you possibly can. That means you move heavy things down, you load any new cargo way down low in the hold, and you get rid of weight from up high. The entire goal is to increase that critical distance between G and M. So there you have it. The invisible dance between G, B, and M is what keeps these massive steel structures from tipping over. It's an incredible, constant balancing act. But you know, that fourth step on the last slide about removing free surfaces, that hints at a whole other, very dangerous idea. What happens to this delicate balance when the threat isn't the water outside the ship, but huge amounts of water sloshing around inside it? Well, that's a whole other can of worms, and a story for another time.